We spent a lot of time talking about how the Bengals have to get ready for the 2026 season, but now looking into the future, they've got a bunch of extensions that they have to prioritize. Let's break those down in today's episode.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. He's James Rapien, I'm Jake Liscow, and today we're talking extensions for the Cincinnati Bengals on the Locked On Bengals podcast. And whether it's DJ Turner and Dax Hill or Chase Brown, Jordan Battle, going on down the list, maybe even Joe Burrow needs another contract extension in the near future. We're going to talk about the most important extensions for the Bengals to be considering going into training camp this year and into the future, because they have until free agency next year to figure out if these guys are going to be part of this team going forward. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets. If your first bet wins, check it out at FanDuel.com to get started. And James, we're going to start with the young players, the rookie contract players. That's probably where a majority or the entire conversation is between DJ Turner, Dax Hill, Myles Murphy after the fifth-year option was declined, Jordan Battle, and Chase Brown. You could even go further than that. Andre Yosevich maybe sneaks into this conversation in some worlds in the future. There are a bunch of Bengals on expiring contracts who have been major contributors to this team in the last year, 2, 3 years, that the Bengals will be considering for extensions after they just spent the entire offseason loading up on veteran talent to help try to get them over the hump in 2026. But now that we're looking forward, it's a very obvious first couple of candidates. The guys we've been talking about the most are these cornerbacks, and the conversation for me probably starts there. Is that the same for you?
Yeah, it for sure. I literally pulled up before we started the top cornerback contracts, because guess what? That's where the Bengals top players, extension candidates, that's where they're thinking. That's where their mind is. And DJ Turner doesn't have to be at Paycor Stadium for us to know that. The number switched to 0, the mindset, the way he carries himself, he's going to want to be one of the top paid cornerbacks in the NFL. And oh, by the way, Dax Hill wants to play outside for a reason, Jake. And part of that reason is 1, comfort, 2, because he thinks he can be his best there, and 3, it's because that bank account can add another 0 potentially in maybe not another 0, but you get my point. Millions and millions more can go into the bank account of the Hills if he's outside. And that's it. I think that's where the priority is. And in the first things first, who do you think is better, DJ Turner or Dax Hill? Well, objectively, the Bengals used DJ Turner as the guy who was following number 1 receivers last year. When he really hit his stride, they said, hey, we trust you to be that dude. Maybe the matchup's going to be against DK Metcalf. Maybe it's going to be one of these bigger, stronger, powerful guys. There's one thing. And then 2, they didn't draft D'Angelo Ponds or one of these slot-only guys. They went out and they got Tacario Davis, who projects to be an outside corner. And so first things first, by the way, represented by the same agent, but DJ Turner, Dax Hill, I think one of these guys is certainly a priority for the Bengals to get done this offseason. And given how they used him on the field, feels like a DJ Turner extension is priority number 1 for the Cincinnati Bengals.
He's cornerback number 1. I agree with you that that's probably their first priority, and I think it probably should be their first priority based on the way that we saw him play last year and the ascension that we've seen from him in the last couple of years. And the on-field production. It is interesting that the conversation went to, where does Dax Hill go if Tacario Davis is good and ready to go? And the conversation about getting the best 3 corners on the field involves potentially moving Dax Hill back inside. And that was our initial reaction. And I think the reaction of everyone who saw the Bengals go draft a cornerback and prioritize the outside guy. Even earlier, if they had picked a corner in the 2nd round, it would have been a guy that could have played outside. It would not have been D'Angelo Ponds. And so we have this world where the Bengals very obviously see DJ Turner, who will be in his age 26 season this year, as their first corner, and the guy that is probably going to get that extension priority first, but it comes down to how much money he's going to ask for, and that's going to be a big factor here. Dax Hill is already earning money this year. They picked up his fifth-year option, so it's $12.6 million for Dax Hill this year. If they were to go that route and extend Dax and prioritize him ahead of DJ, because it kind of feels, and we can talk about this next, like they're only going to get one of these two deals done at this point in some ways, and I think they would like to get both done, and we're hopeful that they get both done, but realistically, with the potential asking prices and their constraints and allocating resources to a position multiple times, despite what the Bengals did with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, that's not in their DNA to pay multiple guys at the same position extremely high contracts. And we know they value corners, so maybe there's a world where they can get both of these done, but both players being 26 years old this year, there's no age to help you. It's just that there's a little bit more financial flexibility because Dax is already earning money in 2026. So if they wanted to consider the cap implications and make that be a tiebreaker, then potentially Dax gives them a little bit of wiggle room there. But I don't think that's the way the Bengals or most NFL teams are making their decisions, James. If they're considering one of these two corners, are going to try to get the deal done with the best player they can.
Yeah, I think that's it. And it really feels like it starts with DJ. And the part of it is what they prioritize, but not just that, what they drafted. Like Takario Davis and DJ Turner complement each other really well if Davis hits a ceiling, just from like a stylistic standpoint, opposite the other one. Doesn't mean it doesn't work with Dax Hill. He's extremely valuable. The realization of one and not both has, I think it's here. And I think when you think of all of the things that Duke Tobin said when he talked about finances, and you just, obviously the Dexter Lawrence trade, but you just look at things, you look at the future cap, you look at their actions with Myles Murphy, who we'll talk about, the action of not picking up the fifth-year option, and you think about it and you're like, okay, well, if you extend DJ Turner, his cap hit's going to be pretty big next year. It's not going to be tiny. Dax Hill's, well, it's going to be pretty significant next year. It wouldn't be tiny. Like, I would just be surprised if they did both and allocate that much money, because again, it would be similar then in these guys, as good as they are not Jamar and T. But are you investing $37 million AAV in these two guys? Because if they play well, what do you think Dax is going to get? Dax is going to get 15 million plus on the open market. And his camp may laugh at the idea that I'm suggesting only 15, just to be clear.
Cordell Flott just got 15 million per year, for example. Cordell Flott, who
a lot of people just said who, and I didn't hear you, but a lot of people said who because they didn't know who that was. And so that's a good way to put it. Like, I'm looking at these cornerback numbers and just the average per year. There are so many guys, I mean, making 16 or more. You're right. Cordell Flott with the Titans, but Zion McCollum, DJ Reed, Jalen Watson, Christian Benford, and I'm going 15 million on up. Travarius Ward, I don't think he's that guy anymore. He's making a lot of money. Tyson Campbell got paid. Like, there are just a lot of guys like that. Marlon Humphrey used to be really good. Is he still? Would you rather have Dax Hill for the next 4 years than Marlon Humphrey? I think you could certainly have that debate, and Ravens fans will see that and roll their eyes, or hear that and roll their eyes. But that's what we're talking about here for these guys. Alante Taylor at 19 million per. And
some
so
of these
DJ
are crazy.
Turner,
I mean, the Titans are on this list twice, and both of them feel a little bit crazy. So some of this is bad team tax, but that is something that when you're looking at contracts doesn't matter for the next guy.
It doesn't. And if you're the Bengals, do you want that much? Do you want 40 million AAV tied up in two guys? Because that's probably more realistic. I think 35 to 37 is probably too low.
I think so. I mean, if DJ Turner is going to try to crack the top 10, and AJ Terrell got 20, Denzel Ward's at 20, Patrick Surtain is at 24. I don't know that DJ Turner gets there, but Patrick Surtain also will have signed that deal before DJ Turner, and so inflation occurs. JC Horn is at 25. DJ Turner probably sees himself in that world, right, in terms of being a number one corner. The Bengals probably don't. That could be where some of the friction occurs in terms of, has DJ Turner shown it over a long enough period of time? Because if DJ is asking for, say, top 5 corner money, you're talking about a $25 million contract then for DJ Turner. And we know how the Bengals felt about, Jesse Bates not having gone to a Pro Bowl, not being an All-Pro and all these things for the top safety money he was asking for. Not that that should matter. You should be trying to get out ahead of these things. You should be trying to get it done this offseason. But that's why DJ Turner is one that I'd really be prioritizing now if I'm the Bengals, because if he is who we think he is and he's deserving of this extension, he's going to go out there and have another great year. That price is only going to go up. We'll continue the conversation, wrapping up with the corners, discussing Myles Murphy's future and Chase Brown in the wake of a couple of other running backs really getting paid here in the NFL. We'll continue the conversation with all those and more coming up next.
Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, and the inbox overflowing. Look, this is a common theme. And guess what? If you're running your own business right now, if you're looking to hire and that one position that you're looking to hire remains open, well, Indeed Sponsored Jobs is going to make your life easier. It's going to find the right candidates that you can find and look for and do on your own and not find the right one. You don't want to waste time. You want to find the right candidates that are going to fit what you're looking for right now. And that's what Indeed Sponsored Jobs is going to do. So you can get to the interview process and find the right person to fill that role in your company. Right now, since we've been talking over the past minute, 27 hires have been made on Indeed Sponsored Jobs, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching, more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Right now, listeners of Locked On Bengals get $75 in sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium status it deserves. That's $75 that are going to help you find that right candidate. All you have to do is go to Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Let them know that Locked On Bengals sent you. Again, that is Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. All right, Jake, let's continue the corner conversation. And to me, if I'm DJ Turner, I look at Denzel Ward and he's making just over $20 million. He signed a 5-year, $100 million deal, total guarantees $71 million, $44 million fully guaranteed. Is that the floor?
I think some of it's fake for Denzel Ward.
For sure. But is that the floor? Like, is that a floor type of?
I don't know if that is a floor. I don't know. Because when Denzel Ward signed that contract, he signed that contract, when he was 25?
He's 9th for AAV. That's why I picked him, right?
I was just looking at where he signed the contract. So he signed the contract in 2022. He was still on his rookie deal.
Yep.
And the cash payouts were bigger. And so was it after the 2022 season? No, it was before the 2022 season. So the Browns got to spread that out from the rookie contract into the future. The big cash outlays are coming. There's a little bit in 2023. He made $23 million, but the biggest cash outlays for the deal come in 2026 and 2027. But there's been quite a bit of inflation since then. If Denzel Ward were doing this deal today, then that number is much bigger. But I don't know if that's the floor for DJ Turner. I think it might be around there. But like Alontae Taylor getting that deal might just make it the floor. Like if Alontae Taylor didn't get $19 million from the Tennessee Titans at 28 years old, maybe it's a little bit of a different conversation. That's why I said the bad team tax doesn't matter, right? Because DJ Turner can just point to it and say, hey, I'm better than Alontae Taylor.
Yep, and he is.
And I'm younger than Alontae Taylor. So I should get more money than Alontae Taylor. So maybe that does make Denzel Ward the floor. But at the same time, I do think it is interesting to look at the overall corner market and see where he fits in. Tariq Woolen just signed a $12 million per year deal it's just a 1-year deal, but a $12 million deal. Bit of a prove it kind of deal for him for the year he's coming off of. But for what DJ's done on the field, like on-field production and consistency, it's interesting to look at the over-the-cap valuation and the Spotrac market values for these guys because they look at comparables based on statistics and age. And the market value, according to Spotrac, is $14 million. The over-the-cap valuation is $16 million. And I don't think those are going to be quite right. But I do wonder how high DJ Turner gets and how the Bengals view it, because they may view it more from that $16 to $18 million range. And DJ might be thinking 22 plus. And then you start to get into some of those debates and decisions. But AJ Terrell getting just 20 million, I think, would be the other one that I'd be looking at here for the Bengals. And again, that deal was signed in 2024, so a couple of years ago. So there's been some inflation, but how much higher does DJ Turner go than AJ Terrell? Right? Isn't that another comparable
for sure.
point that you were talking about?
And it's similar. The part of why I mentioned Denzel is just because of like you look at the size and all of those things. But yeah, Terrell would be a comp. And I think that there are going to be a lot of people that say, "Are you crazy? 20 million for DJ?" Like I think there will be some people that, and it's like, yeah, that's what it's going to be. And I've had some conversations again without even talking to DJ. I would be stunned if he takes a deal that isn't $20 million per year. Like pretty surprised because imagine what his value is if he has to play this year out and he's getting a raise. He's going to make over 3.6 million. Going to get a little bit of a raise regardless. But if you look at it that way in your DJ and they're hesitant on 20 and you go out there and you play well, you might be get a 4-year, $100 million deal, or you get tagged and you make a ton of money because the tag would be pretty significant.
Just wanted to look at the guys that actually signed deals this offseason. So Alontae Taylor at 19 million this year is just 6.4% of the cap. So that would be aligned with like what the Bengals paid Dre Kirkpatrick back in 2017. Yep. And the cap has just gone up so much that it feels crazy. But Dre got 10.5 per year in 2017. Yep. That was 6.3% of the cap. More recent comparables around this number would be Charvarius Ward getting 13 million in 2022, the $18 million corners in 2025, Carlton Davis, Charvarius Ward, Paulson Adebo, and Byron Murphy. So say you get to 7% of the cap, and we look at what that would be this year, and then you do get to 20 million real quick. So even if the number is comparable to some of these lower paid corners from recent years, you have to look at the cap number. And that's why so often I reference the APY as a percentage of the cap this year, because that's often more predictive. That's how we got close on the Jamar Chase contract and the T. Higgins contract projections.
In just looking at the franchise tag projection, 23.69. So basically $24 million for 2027 is the projection.
How likely do you think it is that the Bengals use a franchise tag on a corner this upcoming offseason next year?
If they don't get a deal done with either guy, I would almost guarantee it as long as they play well, right? Like
it's a lot of money, so they would have to play well, but yeah.
But like, yeah, like if DJ Turner's a Pro Bowler, let's say he has the same season as last year in the back half through the whole year. You can't let him walk in free agency. No, there's no scenario where
then you're really paying the price. Yeah, exactly. And I think you do. I think that he's shown enough. I think that number change, man, that often for the Bengals coincides with extensions.
And there's nothing they could have done with DJ. It's not like they could have gotten out more in front of it. Now's the time to get in front of it. Yes. Yeah.
This is the time. Dax is going to be interesting on the other hand, because he's had such a weird journey in the NFL. I guarantee you there are teams that see his position differently across the NFL. If he gets to free agency, what position he's signed to play will be interesting. If he just plays another year at outside corner and he plays well again, then that'll make the decision for him. But he's had such a weird journey in the NFL that I wonder what his ask would be. Like, where do you think Dax is asking if you're looking at, the current list of corners? The Alontae Taylor thing just continues to stand out to me as like kind of a mind-blowing contract that exists.
Yeah.
Because it's so comparable to the Dre Kirkpatrick contract the Bengals did all those years ago.
I think this is where it gets interesting and where you can make the argument that Dax is more likely because one, you can move that cap number around a little bit this year. You're already banking 12 plus million in cap. So if you want to free up some cap, you could do it that way. Two, does he turn down 3 for 50, 3 for 45, 3 for 50? I get it. The Alontae, I get all that. Does he do that? Like if you give him that and it's the first 2 years of it essentially are, and here's the problem, guaranteed, but it's structured in a way where he's going to see the first 2 years for sure. I think it's hard to turn that down if you're him. Maybe you do because you can get more, But how much more are you getting when you know you're going to be the number 2 to DJ? Like I do wonder, and that's where I would be. Is I would make him turn down 3 for 45 with legitimate guarantees. The Bengals won't do that with the guarantees, but maybe it's 3 for 45 with a real big signing bonus up front. That makes it tough. Like, is he turning down 20? Sign this and get 25 million over the next calendar year?
Mm-hmm.
It's tough to say no to. Put it that way.
Yeah, and there's a world where they should be still exploring both.
Yes, that world. That's the world right there, for sure.
And then you have to think about these other guys that we're going to talk about to finish up: Myles Murphy, Jordan Battle, Chase Brown. Do those guys fit into the Bengals' long-term plans? Do they have to revisit any other veterans? And on top of that, they have to consider their external free agent budget, of course. In the future, Amarius Mims is coming up very soon, and they should be doing that one as soon as they can, at least based on what he did last year. We'll wrap up the conversation about Bengals extension candidates and how these guys fit together coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and the NBA Conference Finals are here. It is time. SGA won the MVP, according to multiple reports, and you look, well, the Oklahoma City Thunder favored to win the title. San Antonio Spurs behind them, followed by the New York Knicks. Regardless, FanDuel is the place to go for all things NBA playoffs, where right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets. FanDuel is awesome during the playoffs because you can bet live in-game. You can do player props. You can do same-game parlays. You could parlay the Knicks and parlay them to win the Eastern Conference Finals. Maybe you think they're going to win Game 1 of the East and the Spurs are going to upset the Thunder in Game 1 of the East. We parlay that together right now with FanDuel. Again, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. $5 into $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. All you have to do is head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel. Play your game.
James, I do think the Amarius Mims conversation might be even bigger than some of the other guys we're going to talk about, because he is ascending and appeared to be ascending so rapidly last year that he could very well command a top of market contract at a very valuable position. That will be a guy that we're going to be talking about, as the Bengals need to get him done as soon as possible. Like I said, that's one that seems like that's really going in that direction. We'll see what happens this year. They'll have this opportunity to make the choice next year as we're talking about it, but they really, I think, will want to prioritize that one, and how that impacts the plans for guys like Chase Brown and Myles Murphy and even Jordan Battle, I think is interesting, because those guys are all players that have carved out a significant role on this team. Jordan Battle in line to start at safety again. Chase Brown became a bell cow last year, and we've seen what he can do with a full complement of carries as a running back one in his contributions in the passing game. Myles Murphy, obviously a guy that and I want to shout out the Bengals front office for this. They did the proactive communication thing with him, right? Yep. And he said that, like, they didn't just surprise him with the news. They told him, hey, this is strictly a financial decision. We'd still like to have you around. But can they make that happen financially next year with the other priorities they have, with the corners, with the need to have a budget to patch holes in free agency as well? Do you see any of these guys, James, as likely to sign extensions with the Bengals as of today?
I think the Myles one's interesting because can you still do it now? And like, would he be willing to, and could you do that? Or are you going to play it out? Should you play it out? You could argue, hey, we have a first rounder, a guy in Catches How we had a first round grade on. We've added to that room. We have Boye Mafe. We need to see more out of Myles before we invest there. Like, I get the logic and the thought process behind it. But if he's awesome, then he's getting that Mafe deal. And now you're, instead of 15, 3 for 45, potentially, now it is, it vaults him into a different category when it comes to free agency. And talk about tags that you don't want to use. Well, that's one where he'd have to play out of his mind to earn, right? And so it's tough. It's tough to look at Myles and say, yeah, he's definitely going to sign an extension. I think the most realistic time would be this year. Now, if he goes out there and is just like he was last year, where it's just kind of good, not great, breakout, but it's 5 sacks, some pressure, solid against the run. Well, yeah, then you can pay him the 3 for 45. Like, you can do that if you want him. And then there's a real discussion, do you want him or not? But if he breaks out, boy, oh boy, are you going to regret not picking up that 5th-year option. And that's what's tough about that. Chase Brown's interesting. He's so interesting, man, because I love his mindset. I love his mentality. I think some past comments of mine kind of throw off how I actually feel about Chase Brown. It is just tough to invest that kind of money after you're investing in running back or after you're investing in wide receiver, quarterback. And then you mentioned Amarius Mims. Like, you have to. Like that is a have to do, and you have to get ahead of it because that market will not slow down. And there's a larger Chase Brown conversation that we will have to have, but it's very, very simple. Does he want to get paid? Well, of course he does. But does he want to get paid like Achane, or is he willing to take less than that? Is he willing to take a reasonable deal? And reasonable to him, maybe not reasonable to me. And that's what's tough. Do I want Chase Brown on the Bengals next year? I love it. But 12, 13, $14 million per year? Would you rather have Dax Hill or Chase Brown? Like, real talk. Because you're having that discussion. Would you consider that and say, oh, I'd rather have Chase Brown? Well, I don't know. I don't know if I would say that. And that's what's tough is what does that get in the way of? Because it will get in the way of something. And the reason we know it will get in the way of something is because we've seen it. When they make a move, there is a butterfly effect. It disrupts everything. I think Myles Murphy's option gets picked up if Dexter Lawrence isn't a Bengal right now. I do believe that. Because they make that splash trade for Dexter Lawrence, they're like, let's wait. Let's hold off. We were able to get Cassius Howell in the draft. Let's hold off here. And so what's the ripple effect if you extend Chase Brown? I think that's it. Jordan Battle, not even really in the conversation for me. Maybe the Bengals. You invested in Brian Cook for a reason. I think he's solid, but he needs to show more. Needs to take another step. I'm willing to roll those dice if I'm the Bengals. Maybe not. Maybe they get him on a real budget-friendly type deal. But if I'm them, I make him earn it, make him go out there and show that he is a dude worth extending and giving a long-term contract to.
I'm with you on Jordan Battle. I wonder how the Bengals see it.
Yeah.
And that extends to some degree for Chase Brown. Like what I'm about to talk about, it applies to both of them. They don't have succession plans at those positions. Where ostensibly drafting Cassius Howell, signing Boye Mafe, drafting Shamar Stewart last year, there's a succession plan for Myles Murphy. Like if they lose Murphy, they need to replace him, obviously. But they've invested so much, both in terms of financial resources in Boye Mafe and in draft picks in Shamar Stewart and Cassius Howell, that maybe they don't feel great about investing even more at that position, which they clearly value, but you can invest too much in a position. Maybe there's another draft pick that goes into it instead of a financial resource because you have to balance the rookie contract investments versus the financial investments. But for Chase Brown and for Jordan Battle, there's no guy waiting in the wings right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's no 5th round running back pick this year that they can develop behind Chase Brown for the year. And maybe they're still waiting to see what Taj Brooks can do in that capacity. Maybe Taj Brooks gets a chance to earn a little bit more of a role this year, but comparing Taj Brooks' rookie year to Chase Brown's rookie year, there's some pretty obvious differences.
Especially towards the tail end, right? Like we started to see Chase Brown have a few breakout runs, big plays, and you're like, this is the potential. Yeah.
And we got to the point where when you go look at the statistical comparisons over at Spotrac for their market value tool, that you're comparing Chase Brown to Kenneth Walker statistically over the last 2 years. And Kenneth Walker obviously had a huge 2025 that led to him getting paid really well. But if Chase Brown has a bigger 2026, like Kenneth Walker had a bigger 2025, then he will be compared more favorably to Kenneth Walker, who just got paid, $14.5 million from the Chiefs. But out of these comparables, James Cook, Ramondre Stevenson, Kenneth Walker, and Travis Etienne, or messed up Etienne pronunciation there.
Achane.
We learned
it's literally Achane. He says it's
Achane?
the same as yeah. Yep.
Okay, I knew that it wasn't what we thought it was, but anyway, Chase Brown played more than any of those guys in the last 2 years based on a snaps percentage. He's outgained all but James Cook in terms of rushing yards per game. He had more rushing touchdowns per game than all of them, but James Cook, and he's ahead of all of them in receptions per game, receiving yards per game. Yep. And so the receiving production, receiving touchdowns, not even part of this, but he's been productive in that aspect as well. Like,
let me ask you,
those are things that could really drive his number up, especially if he has another year that takes a step and gets closer to that Kenneth Walker kind of 2024 to 2025 jump in Chase Brown's 2025 to 2026.
Would you take player for player? They both make $3 million a year, which is what Chase Brown set to make. Would you take Devon Achane or Chase Brown right now?
I have not watched enough Achane. I think that what are your thoughts? I mean, you must have thoughts here. I don't feel like I've watched enough of Achane because he plays for a terrible team that I don't pay much attention to, and I don't play fantasy football to have a deep.
I think there are levels. I think there are levels to it, and there's just a different burst speed, like different offense. Like obviously, Chase Brown wouldn't catch as many passes if he wasn't with the Bengals, right? So it's really tough for that. And so, is he awesome? He's awesome, but let's say Chase Brown goes out there and has 1,800 yards from scrimmage, and Jahmyr Gibbs has 1,300. Well, Jahmyr Gibbs is the better player. I don't care. And so there's. Do I think Chase Brown's awesome, and do I want him here? Yes, but there's got to be a level. There's got to be like the same way people probably made faces earlier in the show when they heard us talk about 20 million for Dax Hill. I'm like, oh my God. Like I guarantee you some did. It's the same thing with Chase Brown, like 15 million for Chase Brown. Let's just throw that out there, which is less than Achane. And you just made the case numbers wise. He's ahead of those guys. Like that's a lot. Now the James Cook deal looked big, but it's pretty team friendly. If you looked at it, I remember at the time thinking that. Now I got to go back and I haven't looked at that one specifically since it got done, but it didn't seem that scary when I looked at it and looked how easily they could have gotten out from under it. It wouldn't be like an anchor for the Bills. And so if you can do that, sure, because I believe in Chase Brown, but you just don't want to anchor yourself into. Look at all the money we're paying on all these skill players. There's got to be a fine line. And by the way, you better believe Chase Brown knows he's not catching as many passes in other offenses. It's just not. He's not going to be as involved in some ways. Now, maybe he thinks he would run for 1,400 yards instead of 1,000 because he'd get more rushing attempts. Maybe. But hopefully you can find a middle ground where it makes sense for all sides. If you can't, and you're talking about the Achane money, I'm good. By the way, I'm good on Achane at that money too. It's just there's only a few guys that would be worth that, and it would be the real special players that really change the game.
I don't know if the Bengals can afford to pay a running back period right now with the way their team is put together, the way they run their offense. Like this is a team that since Zach Taylor, Joe Burrow arrived has shown consistently how they value the running back position, and they see it as fungible. They see it as replaceable. They see it as we're going to throw a 5th-round pick at it every now and then, and we're going to hope that those guys develop, and sometimes they will and sometimes they won't. We saw them reduce the money that was going to be paid to Joe Mixon before they moved on from Joe Mixon. Like that is not the kind of running back that this offense has been looking for in the Joe Burrow, Zach Taylor era. Maybe they changed their tune on that to some degree because they could very well be in a spot next year where they're like, man, we don't have the talent at running back. We need to go spend a 2nd-round pick again. But they haven't in the past in this era of Bengals football. But paying a running back when you're also paying your quarterback, 2 receivers, and we'll see what Mike Gesicki's future is. They currently have funds allocated to Mike Gesicki. You're going to need to pay Amarius Mims. They're paying Orlando Brown. They're going to then have to figure out 3 interior spots. Maybe that's Connor Lew and Brian Parker, and that's 2 of them that are very cheap in the future. And then you got a couple more years of Dylan Fairchild. Maybe that's how they make it work. But you can't pay everybody at every single position.
Yep.
You can't pay every starter. You have to have some guys producing on rookie contracts, and running back is one of those positions where you can find that pretty often. And so that's why, to me, philosophically, the way this offense works, it's hard to justify spending significant money at that position.
For sure. That's it. And that's what's really tough. That's my struggle. Part of it at least. And especially if you have very good, right? If you can get him on good money, fine. I get it. You keep your good players, but like I have him ahead of Jordan Battle. Sure. As of now, he's a better player than Myles Murphy. There's no doubt, but positional value matters. What you have allocated matters. What it looks like. Could they make it work? Absolutely. Should they? I think it depends. And ideally, do they do it this offseason if they're going to do it, or do they do it next offseason? If they are going, like if we tell you, hey, they are definitely going to extend Chase Brown over the next 12 months.
I think you always would rather do it sooner than later, because if you wait till later, there will always be more contracts. And this is bad team tax. Like Achane was more productive than Chase Brown. So like getting paid more makes sense. But these are bad team taxes that are leading to some of these guys getting paid. But that bad team tax doesn't matter for subsequent deals. It just drives up the price for everybody.
Yep. Yeah. And that's it. And so hopefully they can find a way to make it work with multiple corners, not just one corner. And then we'll see where it goes from there. But yeah, I think there's a larger conversation with each of these. We didn't have a lot of time to hit on Myles, hit on Chase enough, but I still think there's more there, because that running back market, I think he's going to want the more than what Mixon got, for example, which was 12 million per. And I just don't know if you're the Bengals, if that makes sense.
And it could be tougher to replace him. Like I said, no succession plan there. We'll see with Taj Brooks this year, but like Samaje Perine ain't a succession plan. I love Samaje Perine, but like that's not what that is. He's a great role player for the team. So I wonder how they'll treat these positions where they don't have the guys coming down the pipe, or how comfortable they'll be knowing that they have to turn over a position entirely, because they're not going to want to be in that spot. But running back is just a very unique position in the NFL when you talk about how well you can get rookies to contribute, cheap rookies to contribute, mid to late round rookies to contribute. It's not foolproof, obviously, and we've seen what happens when teams are bereft of running back talent. That's what leads to the Chiefs going out and paying Kenneth Walker, for example, with Patrick Mahomes coming off the ACL. I'm sure that's a factor there, but so you don't want to go too far in that direction. But for the Bengals and where their investments are, very difficult to project an extension, I think, for Chase Brown right now. But yeah, getting any of these done sooner than later will save you money. And like you said, James, I think there's more on the bone with a lot of these conversations. But after the corners, I think it gets very interesting to figure out where or if the Bengals will prioritize extensions for any of these players that are on expiring deals this year, or if they just look ahead and say, you know what, Amarius is the next big target, and that's what they need to prioritize next offseason. We'll have more time for these topics as we get into the offseason here. We've got another open practice from the Bengals this week that we'll get to probably hear from some more players and those sorts of things that we'll have covered for you here on Locked On Bengals as well. But until then, that's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Thanks for listening. Hoo day, and have a good one.